Hi guys, it's Sabrina Baker from Acacia HR Solutions, here to answer the job search question of the week. And this week's question has to do with gaps in employment and whether or not you should explain those on your resume. And before I answer the question, I just want to give you my disclaimer that I give to all of my job search clients. And that is that searching for a job is not an exact science. There are a lot of questions that you could ask recruiters, job search coaches, HR professionals, hiring managers, or read blogs or websites and take that question and get many different answers. And the reason is that there are lots of different strategies that work, and what works for one person may not work for another. So if you have something that's working for you, if you have a resume format, if you have an interviewing technique, if you have a connection, a networking technique that's working for you, and you read something or you hear something from a coach or recruiter that says don't do that, don't stop. If it's working for you, keep doing it. It's when things aren't working, when you've been doing the same thing over and over and you're not getting any results, that you need to seek some advice and try new things. So that's my disclaimer. What works for one doesn't always work for another, so take that into account and don't try and keep up with what everybody says, because it will definitely drive you crazy. But on to the question. Here's my answer to gaps in employment and explaining those on a resume. I never advise my clients to explain the gaps on a resume for a couple different reasons. One, you just don't have a lot of space on a resume, and white space is okay. You don't have to have every piece of paper filled up with information on your resume. You want to leave just some white space just to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So gaps in employment are just going to take up more space that you could be explaining your accomplishments, explaining what you can do in the future, explaining some things that are really going to capture their attention. So white space alone is a good reason to leave off gaps in employment. The other one is it may not be relevant. So if you took off time to stay home with your children, or you took off time to take care of an ailing parent, both of those are very notable, but they don't have anything to do with what you've done work-wise or what you can do work-wise, and so the resume is really not the place for it. Now there is one caveat, and that caveat is volunteer work. If you have a gap in employment, but during that time you are doing volunteer work that is relative to the job that you do. For example, I have a client who is in marketing, and during a gap in employment, she served on the board of directors for a large hospital system where she was completely in charge of a marketing campaign for $1 million fundraising effort. That is absolutely relevant to her job. It was almost a full-time job for her, even though she wasn't getting paid for it. And it is exactly the same kind of stuff that she would be doing had she been in a full-time job getting paid. So that's something that she should absolutely have on her resume, even though it kind of covered a time when she wasn't working for money. She was still working in that volunteer position. So that's the only caveat. Now, if you feel like you have to explain the gap somewhere, if you feel like it's not getting you in the door, so because you have this gap, recruiters are completely ignoring your resume, then use the cover letter to explain it, or use the application. When you fill out the online application, you can actually just explain that gap as you're filling out all of your jobs and your work history. Put it in there. I would not put it on the resume just because it just takes up too much space and it's just not relevant, more than likely. So I hope this was helpful. If you have a question that you would like answered, I would love for you to check out my Facebook page, and you can put your question right on the wall there, and it'll either be answered immediately or it may be chosen to be answered in one of these videos. I also hope that you will check out my blog, hrchatterbox.com, and I'll put all the links with this video. But there is a job seeker toolkit page which has lots of information for a job seeker, and I think that you'll find it very helpful. I hope you're doing well. I hope your job search is going well, and thanks for watching.